Today we have Erwin Veldhuis here in our podcast studio. And Erwin, you have, as me, a technical background. You studied information technology, and then you went to really interesting, let's say, C-level positions. You led developer teams, and also as a CTO, you built a company. So very entrepreneurial. Lightbit was one of your companies. And now we can have you here as a head of growth and partnerships for Benelux and the Nordics here at CREATEQ. Really happy to have you on the podcast. And I think we should really talk about the crypto space because, when I first met you, the funny introduction was that you didn't want to use our wireless LAN because you said I worked in crypto, so I have my own here. So, so that's something I really like. So maybe you can point out a bit when we talk about this crypto space. It's really quickly also about this auditable infrastructure term. So in a space with crypto, how do you build systems that regulators and auditors really can trust?
Thank you, Mark. No, true. That's interesting that you remember that part from me because I still don't use any open networks or anything in that space because after being a CTO for 5 years in the crypto space, I still don't trust anything anymore, no networks. And I saw too many things that hackers try to get your data and everything that I'm so cautious on these things that even my family at home is not allowed to use them. So it's really funny that I always have discussions at home if friends from my oldest son come that they ask for, hey, can I get access to your network? And I say no. That's really interesting. So it's a good one that you remember that one. That's funny. No, but if you think about how you build systems and auditable infrastructure and things like that, you have to have that in mind. You really start and make sure that everything you do is loggable, that you have immutable trails, that you have a separation on environments. Especially in a regulated space, you work really closely with auditors, you work with regulators, and they really demand that everything you do, you can show them what happened. For example, let's say someone makes a trade, an order fails, you need to know what happened. Is it executed? Where is it executed? Is it not executed? Is it partly executed? This auditable traces, it's about money. And the auditors, what they do is they constantly check you on, do you have your money? Can you show me why this order failed? So it goes quite deep in what they want to see and what they want to know. So every transaction needs to be recorded. Every system change as well. So let's say you make a small piece of code that you change, and only if it's one line, it needs to be traceable because it can impact the flow of money and can impact also the flow of crypto. Keeping that in mind, you also build in that way a relationship with your regulators and auditors to make sure that you can comply on their needs and what they expect from you.
How did you handle this compliance during your time? Because you also want to be fast and agile, but you need to invest quite a lot in compliance. How do you balance it?
Yeah, that's also an interesting question because compliance is in this market a given. From the start, we keep that in mind. You train your internal people on compliance. For example, within Lightbit, we had a huge compliance team that even was accessing all the coins we listed in our system. Was it not a security? Can we list it? Is there a risk? What's the group behind it? Everything you do in a system like crypto is regulated. This at the moment when I started in Lightbit, the regulation was not that sharp. But the only thing what we did already as a company, make sure that we were compliant, what the regulators in the countries were asking, make sure that the development team also was up to speed with that they know what was asked from that. So you need to inherit that in your processes from the start. If you don't do that, it will be more difficult to apply for licenses, etc. So, for example, we had a license in the Netherlands, we had a license in France, and we had a license in Austria. At that time, I think we were the only one that had licenses in multiple countries. So it was pretty cool, but that is because we inherited from the really start when basically the management of Lightbit joined, the new setup basically with a new investor, then we pushed this forward. So the compliance was one, auditability and compliance were the things that we focused on.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and tell me, when we talk about crypto software engineering, this is always a monster. Everything is a bit different. Can you tell me a bit more about this monster, about this beast in software engineering from crypto?
It came from a company where the systems were not 24/7 running. And in this case, everything is 24/7. Downtime is a no-go. You can't have downtime. Bugs is also an issue because if you have bugs, that can cost money. And especially the 24/7, that asks something from your development team because they need to build systems that are reliable 24/7. It asks things from your platform team because they need to support 24/7 the platform. For example, coding mistake you make that can cause a lot of damage to your organization. It can cost you money, but it also can cause hacks. So I think it's not about just writing the code. It's also building an infrastructure, financial infrastructure, and there's no room for failure because you're also constantly under attack. You have to think about security, compliance, and all these things. You need to think about it at once. You can't just say, hey, we do now this piece and we do that piece afterwards. That's impossible. It's request something different from your engineers because they need to be spot on constantly. And they have to think, hey, if I deliver something, is there a weakness in the system? Is it reliable? Can it scale? Is it compliant? Because else it can cause also problems. If it's not compliant, then one of the regulators will come to you and say, hey, you built something that we don't agree on. Can you explain? And so you're constantly working in a way that you need to be sure that everything you do is robust, scalable, and secure. And that asks something different from developers. And I saw that also, like some developers were extremely good at it and some are not.
When I look back in my e-commerce experience, it seems like a bit that there is Black Fridays all over the year and really not planned. And whenever someone is tweeting about the coin, it could happen that it's just a very high peak in traffic. But what about the cybersecurity part? I mean, how do you make sure that you secure or like do you execute the secure development? What does it mean? Do you need to do more testing or how to prevent cyber attacks in this kind of critical infrastructure?
Yeah, that starts with the people. You need to train your internal people on cybersecurity. That means that everybody in the organization needs to be aware on basically the risk we are at in crypto, because it's not about if you're on target, you are a target. And the target is not once a day, it's the whole day.
It's not enough if you just don't share the public Wi-Fi, so you have a different compliances in
Yeah,
place.
I do. I have myself a different compliance as well. So I write my own documents for my own home. You need to be extremely sharp on these things. So what we, for example, did, we had Sneak implemented in our pipeline. So we were scanning all our own created software, but also third-party tools we're using. Next to that, we had a 4i principle. So always before something went to production, a second person would have seen the code before it's executed and it's going to production. So the whole CI/CD was not fully implemented. There's always a last basically check from someone, can this go to production or not? What we also saw happening, for example, is that every time we release something new and basically send it out to the public, we saw the attack rate going up. So hackers are constantly monitoring your system on every fallback or every small thing they can find, they will target for. Let's say that a lot of people had sleepless nights about this every time that something went new live. You can try to test the exploits and everything, but it's so difficult to get these things right and make sure that you stay safe. But it's a mindset. Every developer in the team, but also a PM needs a product manager, needs to have that in mind. If you don't, then you're at risk.
Yeah. Hey, and when you talk about scaling, so I guess in crypto, it's like in other industry, it's like in other industries as well. The case, whenever you enter a new country, there is new regulations. So how do you make sure that from a technical point of view, you scale the crypto platform across Europe and you also meet those scalability challenge or regulations as well?
Every country has its own regulations, and nowadays that's better because you have the MiCAR, meaning that is for the whole Europe. It's starting to become the same. At that time, for example, the French regulator was requesting something completely different than the Austrian regulator. 80%, 90% is the same. but there is 20% you need to adapt to. So what we were doing, we were using standardized tools from the markets. Like we used Auth0, for the whole login management, Fido for facial recognition. Mostly the steps behind were different per country. So you had to implement that per country. This disadvantage of that is that it will take you much more time.
Thanks for sharing. Now, the most difficult question. So when you look back and just think about the answer, and you would meet yourself that time, what two challenges would you give more priority when you would have the knowledge from today? What two challenges you see the most important ones?
That's an interesting one. I would, from the start, focus even more on compliance, because that would make my life easier later on. Our compliance was quite heavily involved, but I would focus even more on that one, and I would focus more on scalability. That's the whole thing about this. I think the security we had in control was we inherited quite quickly, hired the right people, and put the right people in the right spots. That helps a lot. That gave me less sleepless nights, to be honest. But I think the compliance and scalability were, for this market, is the most important one. Like those two things I would definitely do, but it's the whole thing what you build in your team. You need to build a team that thinks with you. You don't do this alone. It's the whole team effort. Everybody needs to have the same idea, the same trust.
And now you're in Netherlands building also the team for us. So the initiatives we're driving together, I mean, I think the match is really interesting to have also those sensitive data, sensible infrastructures, high-stake industries. And it's different also in other industries than fintech, but I think you really make sure compliance and there's regulation standards are met while being productive, while having a fast, agile team developing software. I think that's going to be a lot of an interesting journey. Thank you really much for attending, and let's dive deeper into those topics later on.
Let's do that. Thank you, Mark.